Good morning and welcome to Deep Dives with New Perspectives. I'm Michael Bartlett in Santa Fe, New Mexico. If you'd like our channel, if you're enjoying what we're offering, please click subscribe, please hit like, and please share with your friends. Welcome, Merrylin. How are you doing this morning?
I'm pretty good, Michael. I'm Merrylin LeBlanc with Michael Bartlett, obviously. And, I know that those hearings are going on right now with Amy Coney Barrett. And it just makes me think, I am at a point where I think we need a constitutional convention and revise our Constitution on several levels. And one of them is the whole Supreme Court, as far as I'm concerned, that the selection of these justices by whomever is president is unsatisfactory for me. Totally. Because if it continues the way it is, there's no total representation on the court. And the fact that, I guess one has to put oneself in the situation of being a judge and being fair and hearing both sides. And I'm sure that you have had, Michael, in your situation with friends or family, or situations in your workplace where you might have had to decide, well, there's different sides being presented here, and what's the right thing to do? And I can think of not criminal cases, obviously, but situations, personal situations in the workplace and also in the home, where it's, even though you have your own preferences, it's not that difficult to see what would be fair. That's my opinion. Of course, I'm a Libra rising, which means I'm ruled by Venus. And to me, Venus is all about fairness. Venus as associated with Libra, not so much with Taurus. We see another side of Venus with Taurus. And we all have those. I mean, we humans are made of multiple things and multiple parts, and our minds and our consciousness work that way as well. It's not like everything's one color or everything's one size within us. I mean, just even think of clothes. You might wear a large for one article and a small for another article. I mean, that's part of human nature, that we have all these different components of ourselves, whether we're talking about tangible things or intangible things. And I guess, and I haven't really thought about past justices at all of the Supreme Court, but if I were to think about them now, Justice Roberts in some ways has surprised us at times with how he has sided with the so-called liberals on the court versus the conservatives. Although I've read articles that have explained his strategy for future cases. And that's somewhat disturbing to me. I'm way beyond childbearing age, but God forbid, I am pro-choice. It is not my place to judge what I would probably, since I had wanted children at one point in my life and didn't have them, I probably would never have had an abortion, and I haven't. But that doesn't mean that I would look down on, condemn, or anything else any person. Matter of fact, I have friends who have. And those friends have shared some things. It's not an easy decision. I mean, for people to think that women are just flippantly out there going, oh, well, if I get pregnant, I'll have an abortion. I would say, I don't, I don't have a large number of people in mind that I know that have done that. But in my experience, that's not the case at all, not at all. And it's not my place to judge them. And I know, well, you and I would, we no longer have this in common with Amy Coney Barrett. We were brought up Catholics. Um, not my experience. I never had anything extreme from what I've read and heard about her and her practice of Catholicism. But uh, uh, I just, I just don't think. I mean, I've said this to a mutual friend who's pro-life, who's Catholic. I said, when were we ever taught to judge another person with their behavior, or to even proselytize and lay on them our beliefs, or expect the government to enact laws that would support our beliefs? And so we've come to a place that's very disturbing to me, and actually what it seems like we're bringing religion into the Constitution. That's
Yeah, I mean, you bring up such really wonderful points. Kind of like what we talked a little bit about last week. Is I'm still kind of surprised that the Republican Party is kind of in bed with the Catholic Church. That was something that was anathema up to not too long ago. As we were originally talking about the court, and we wanted to talk about Jupiter and law. But the truth is, the other benefic, which you brought up so beautifully, is Venus. And the truth is, what this whole debate, what this whole issue is about, is our values. How do we create a system that protects as many people's values as possible? What we're seeing played out in the streets in our country and on the media and also around the world is very different than what's happening in the courts and also happening with our political systems. The Republican Party is trying to keep their values, which are actually pretty simple. They have a very simple kind of amount that they want to work with. I think that's also what makes it easier for Republicans to kind of get people behind them versus Democrats, who I think Democrats for the most part are really individualized and particularized. So, we all have very set ideas along a continuum, whereas most Republicans kind of fit within a little bit of a range, I think, of like, these are the things that we accept and not accept. But the truth is, coming from that standpoint, they see other people enjoying or expressing their values as a threat to themselves. And that's the part that I don't really understand. We need to step into our court, our government's going to have to step into this place of recognizing that we're no longer black and white. We're no longer, male, female. We're beginning to express ourselves along a continuum, and all those expressions are wanting to be seen and acknowledged and honored. I was so touched by some of the postings yesterday for the Indigenous Peoples Day, which I love much better than Columbus Day. A friend of mine who shared a picture of her grandparents, Alex Trenowith, who's an astrologer, shared pictures of her grandparents who were Native Canadians and who, well, Native before Canada obviously was there, but talked about
Well,
how
we say Native Americans. We could call them Native Americans because the whole continent is America.
Yeah, exactly. But the point was that she, it was a lovely picture of the two of them smiling, and she was saying, the things that they had to endure. And the truth is, that there's so many things like what women have had to endure over, people of color have had to endure. And I think those things are now the lids being popped off that. So now we have to have the discussion. Now we have to look at it. That's one of the gifts I think that Trump is bringing to the table, is we're having to talk about it. We're having to say something about this, because it's no longer, we can't condone white supremacy. We can't support anything that puts any group of people above anyone else. It's just, it's not where we're headed as humanity, for humanity.
Well, Michael, you put your finger on the major point here, and it relates to Venus. It's that Taurian Venus when you said values. Because basically the biggest value behind all of this kind of activity is economic value. It's all money. And while you were saying these things, I kept thinking, another reason why we need to take money out of politics. I mean, God bless the party that I'm affiliated with, but I am sick and tired of requests for donations.
Yeah.
And when I think about this money is just going to these commercials, and this is all like Venus, Mercury kind of energy in terms of what kind, and Jupiter, which relates to the laws and the justice. It's like these commercials that you see on mainstream television. I don't have cable, but or satellite, but I'm going, these are disgusting. And on either side, I will say that there some are, not as bad as others, but I'm tired of that sort of thing. And I'm going, who believes this stuff?
I just change the channel as soon as it starts to go on. And I'm like you, I don't care whose side it is, because they're both lying. They're both playing on people's fears. And that, it's interesting because you bring up the, Taurus again. I mean, you bring up the Venus again. Taurus, in Venus and Taurus is me, my way. It's me, my, mine-itis, as Alan Oken always say. It's very, it's very toddler-like in a way. It doesn't want, and it's fixed. It doesn't want to change. It doesn't want to do anything any other way. It's like, it's mine. It's always going to be mine, and you can't take it. And people out there are operating that way for a country that belongs to more than just themselves. And that's where you bring in, Venus in Libra is theoretically a higher octave, but Libra is a balance, right? So, you can have a Libran really operating out of the lower functioning side of Venus, still in that kind of thing, or getting wrapped up in relationships that are really not appropriate or whatever, or you can get in that grander idea of going, wow, I value my values, and I want to value everyone's values. How do we make it so that everyone actually has value?
Right.
How do we take the dollars out of value? I mean, the hard part, I think, with our society is we've attached dollar to value.
Right.
And
but even, I mean, we're talking about big money values in this case. It's big money values who want to have control of our Congress, of our presidents, of our Supreme Court, so that they can accrue more. I mean, the whole thing is obscene.
Dynasties. I mean, we're talking royal families that are being created with money. I mean, in a lot of ways, we're not very different than the old fiefdoms. I mean, sometimes when I think about it, oh my God, I've got my Netflix subscription, I've got this subscription. It's like everything's like taking a little bit out of your pocket every month, and it's like it's worse than taxes when you think about it. And now everything's become even more split up. So when you have problems with Netflix and you call, they say, oh, that's your server, and then you call up them, and they say, oh no, that's your internet provider. And everyone's like pointing the finger at everyone else while they're all raking in this money. We're all tithing. It's like this weird tithing thing. It's this. I don't see how this can continue. I have Venus in Capricorn. Like, I want it all for, I don't want to pay for it. I mean, I want to pay as little as possible for it and get the best quality for it. I mean, that's that's my Venus in Capricorn.
This will come back to the court system. I think we're ripe for, for the people to take over the courts, and for, for more deliberative justice being distributed. And these are, yes.
There was a book I read, and I wish I could look it up, but back in the 80s, I used to be a voracious reader when I was younger, and there was this story about a plot where someone or this group, we always talk about the hidden group, or the deep whatever they talk about.
Deep state, oh God, okay.
Or whatever. But it was this interesting thing where someone went about and killed all the justices. And it was this interesting thing. And then what does that mean for our country? What does that mean? This body, it's been given powers that really it shouldn't have. It's now making decisions over things. It shouldn't have made any decision about the election. That shouldn't have gone to the Supreme Court. That isn't their job. Their job is to interpret the law and see if it is in alignment or not alignment with the Constitution. And when you say about Roberts is a good example, there's talk of individuals. I mean, like, there's anyone who steps into a place of office. I mean, this is also another kind of Jupiter, Saturn. It's kind of an Aquarian kind of a thing, Capricorn to Aquarian, stepping into this place of statehood. Sometimes when you step into a position, you're not only imbued with whatever it is that you come to the place with us, but there's the imbuing, there's that energetic feeling or foundation of that which you're holding as an aspect that is in continuation. You know, this is something that's been going on for a long time. And so I think sometimes it helps sway you. You begin to see that the power is with what it is. But then, you know, we really don't know what are the finances with the Supreme Court. Is there money being exchanged on the level that our senators and our Congress people are being played with? You know, the money that Trump is doing, you know, when you owe $420 million and you don't say who it's owed to, you begin to wonder how our government has become more fascist over the last, you know, well, obviously over a long period, but it's just been fascist this whole 4 years.
I wasn't thinking of the Supreme Court members getting money. However, that's a whole other attitude. It's basically looking at who appoints the Supreme Court members, and that basically goes to the president and with the consent of the Senate. And then you see, of course, and that's where the influences are obvious. Although what flashed in my mind was, oh gosh, couple decades ago maybe, was you know, some reports on the Koch brothers entertaining the likes of Scalia and a few others, and so you kind of you kind of wonder. I mean, people are entitled to their associations, but often in that realm there are associations for other reasons, and one would love to be a fly on the wall and know what those other reasons were.
I mean, to be honest, I mean, after seeing what happened with Obama, I mean, you know, someone who was elected under the banner of change, and to see that there was some change that did happen, but there was a lot that really didn't. I actually feel that there's something along the line. I've said this to many friends over the years. I don't know if you and I have shared this on the air or not before, but I think what happens is some of these people get into office, and then after they're elected, there's a little meeting that happens, and they say, hey, there are two ways this can play out. You play with us, you do the things that we want you to do, you know, we can keep it kind of quiet, and you, your family or whatever are going to be taken care of for generations. Or this is a one-term deal and just expect that you're not going to go anywhere. I mean, I don't know what else can get individuals to, I mean, I know for a fact, because I know my ex worked with Obama back in the day. I mean, the man has amazing integrity, and I'm not meaning to say he hasn't, but I think there's so much involved in our government that is not about the people. It's about a very select group of individuals who are intent on keeping their dynasties and their power intact. And that's not deep state. That's not, you know, what do you call that? Like Oliver Stone stuff. What is his movies always involve? Conspiracy. It's not conspiracy theory. It just simply is. And these people don't know. They don't have the experience of anyone telling them no. Trump is a perfect example of this. The Koch brothers are an example. There's one Koch brother who, I don't know if you remember a few years ago, there was this guy who was selling, you know, these 18th century wines, and one of them was from Thomas Jefferson's thing. Well, I guess this guy obviously was lying and sold the wrong thing. Well, he ended up selling it to one of the Koch brothers or one of the Koch brothers' sons or something. Well, this guy is like brutal. He has so much money that if anyone tries and screws him, he will just basically stick your butt in court and sue you ad nauseum and make your life a living hell. And he has the money to do it. I mean, like one of those people that just has been, I mean, so you have these people who are used to getting their way at all cost. You know, I talked to a friend recently, you know, this is a power thing that we're playing with. You know, I talked to a friend the other day who lives out in La Cienega, and she had a problem with something. And I said, oh, well, did you call up the sheriff? So yeah, I had them come over, and guess what? You know, the sheriff is related to the neighbor, so they're not going to do anything. You know, these are these things that, you know, we have to start changing the way this is done. And it's kind of reverse discrimination here too, because it's funny because, you know, she's white, you know, because we have our Latin culture here and our native culture here in Santa Fe. But, you know, it's these interesting power things that get played out. But the truth is, we have to make things fair for everyone. This is Venus in Libra. You know, the desire for it. This is Jupiter on its highest level. Jupiter can be really generous, but Jupiter can also just, you know, go and make people have power, you know, overinflate people's ego and start having them operate in incorrect ways. And that's where, you know, what I love about Jupiter is it can make you get so puffy that you have to be popped.
Yeah, a lot of what we've been, we said we were going to talk about uh, the legal system and, you know, justice, and and a huge part of that relates to Jupiter, but also what we've been talking about in terms of the expansion of this kind of power that permeates a great deal of our public lives and creeps into our private lives, has to do with a quality of Jupiter that's related to, in some cases, greed, but just I want more, I want more, I want more, you know, it just, it happens with Jupiter. It happens. I mean, in the mythology, I mean, obviously it was like, you know, he was married. He could have sex with his wife, but no, every time he saw a beautiful woman, he wanted to have sex.
Or man, or boy.
Yes.
He was an equal opportunity. I mean, that's Jupiter. Jupiter's really on that level, is very indiscriminate. Jupiter really doesn't care. And that's kind of this interesting thing. You know, we've had Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto playing around and meeting each other in Capricorn. And now they're going to go into a little bit more of that idealistic yet more fixed sign of Aquarius. But sorry, you were just about to say something.
Well, when you said this point about Jupiter doesn't care, it's a part of Jupiter that I have been pondering over the past few years, actually, because I'm early on when I was, you know, a few decades ago doing astrology and being with astrologers, and often in talking politics, often Jupiter was presented as the good guy, you know. Oh, Jupiter must be Democrats, and I'm going, you know, I wouldn't equate either of them to either party. I would say both parties display aspects of both of them. But one of the things, it made me look at the Jupiter-Saturn cycles, which, among other things, do have to do with the legal system and the governmental system and the social milieu in which we find ourselves. But what I've noticed is over, you know, these are 20-year cycles. And what I've noticed looking at them is that Jupiter will take what Saturn is defining. And of course, you know, Saturn has always been depicted as the bad guy, the heavy, you know, get rid of your karma. But, you know, another perspective of that is Saturn is actually the good guy who is really wanting us to free ourselves of the shortcomings of our past, whether it's in this life or some other kind of existence, and be capable of creating the best that we are capable at any given time. Without Saturn, we don't create anything. Saturn is the manifestor on the physical plane. And but Saturn also says, before we can manifest what you want to manifest, you got to deal with this stuff over here. and what Jupiter does is goes, okay, so Saturn wants us to deal with this stuff. I'm going to just expand the stuff. You know, so
or dismiss it as being, oh, it's not anything to worry about. I mean, the Saturn Jupiter story is the old story of the ant and the grasshopper, right? Remember the old parable of the grasshopper? The ant being Saturn and the grasshopper being Jupiter, you know, be out there having fun and not worrying about the fact that winter's coming down the line. Saturn knows winter's coming.
Well, in this vein, you know, just taking the last cycle that we're ending now of Jupiter and Saturn that began in Taurus back in 1980. Am I right? Yeah. Or no. In 2000. I'm sorry, I'm in a time warp. In 2000, 20 years ago. I can't believe it's 2020. It's just hard. Time is just whipping through us. Anyway, you know, that began in Taurus. We were talking about Venus Taurus, at a degree that was about a jewelry store, a massive value on the physical material plane, okay? And what did we see since 2000? These oligarchs, these billionaires amassing more, I mean, just in the last year, doubling their income, doubling their wealth. And to me, that's Jupiter following literally the imagery and saying, oh, let's just increase it, but it wasn't increasing it for everybody. It was increasing it, and this is where status comes in, and Saturn, increasing it for those people who are the authorities,
The ones who did the work.
Yeah. Yes. Well, this is Taurus, those who have arrived at the Taurian dream of having everything the physical plane can offer you. and so this is an example to me of Jupiter simply going along with where Saturn's at.
I have Jupiter in Taurus, so I totally understand that feeling. I mean, Jupiter, I mean, it's not, I mean, Taurus loves the physical plane. I mean, it loves the material. I mean, loves sensuality, loves good food, loves, massage me, rub me, bring me jewels, feed me peeled grapes and fan me while you're massaging my toes. And if we all take turns, everyone could really enjoy that. I'll never forget. It kind of reminds me of something I remember, like in first grade during reading time, I would kind of structure the kids, Mars and Virgo, right? Kind of get the kids. We'd all kind of sit like in ways where we'd be able to touch each other's backs while story time was going on, and we would take turns. And now I think about that. That's so. And my Jupiter and Venus trine one another, so it's like so like, why shouldn't we be able to feel all the wonderful experience life has to offer? But, it brings back to that thing, it's the status thing, it's that Capricorn, and we're in that placement right now. It's this, this amazing amassing of wealth, Jupiter, Pluto getting together, this amazing power grab. We're going to see this continue to play out through the end of the year.
This is what I'm saying, that now we've got a new cycle with Jupiter and Pluto, and Jupiter's going to do the same thing with Pluto. And remember when Pluto, this is where the 80s came to mind, I guess, when Pluto was back in the 1980s in Scorpio in its own sign, we saw this moneyed class just
take off.
Yes.
Lifestyles of the rich and famous. Remember that? I mean, all that was just like
people. I remember astrologers at the beginning of that transit talking about how, because Scorpio does have to do also with our psychological setup, the shadows in our psyches, and that there would be this profound healing, and there would be better psychological health on the planet, and
well, I mean, in one sense, when
that happened for some people, but
yeah, when I think the gay community, when you think about it, I mean, when Pluto went into Scorpio, that was when AIDS happened, and to think now, here we are at this point where gay marriage is accepted. I mean, I actually, to be honest, I never thought that was going to happen in my lifetime. So I think that's really huge. And tying that back again into the Supreme Court, that is yet another aspect besides abortion. Gay marriage is another thing that's coming up. And then, as of course, as the Democrats really well pointed out yesterday, the whole idea around medical health coverage for everyone, where our elected officials get it immediately. They can go and see the Surgeon General to be taken care of. Trump's whole thing. Here's the thing about power. These people are so stuck in it that they don't even understand. Just like how we are on our own level. But Trump got the best kind of treatment possible in the world. Of course, he's feeling great. Of course,
you have to pay for it.
Yeah, and we're paying for it. Like everything else in his life, we're paying for it. So it's like But the thing is,
remember, he promised that we could all have it too for free.
Right. I'll hold my breath until that happens.
Me too. Really. Yeah. Well, you're reminding me, Michael, that obviously there's both preferable things and unpreferable things that happen with these cycles, because at, in astrology, we always recognize that any placement, any body, any planet can produce good or evil. You know, the choices are ours. And I guess that, you know, comes back to where we began this show, actually, in terms of, you know, can't, our what we're having, we have a person, the so-called leader of this country, who thinks nothing of lying. And, you know, lying is stealing from other people.
Oh,
It's
I like that.
stealing the truth.
Right.
You know, it's not okay.
No.
And this is the thing that's bothersome in these times. Wow, we've gone back and forth all over.
I think, you know, I think I'm going to call this one, I think I'm going to name this one, whose value has more value? The expression of Venus.
The people, or the people who have the titles.
Right, exactly.
The people who have the titles. And this, you know, we began, one of the things I said at the beginning was that we were overdue for a constitutional convention and changing parts of the Constitution. And of course, obviously, in that would be get rid of that electoral college, which different states are trying to do by committing the delegates to the person with the popular vote, who has the highest vote in the popular vote. But we shouldn't have to be doing this. And unfortunately, the people that can change these things are the people that are benefiting from these things. So they're in a, you know, I don't know about you, but when I was in elementary school and high school, taught, oh, that we have this perfect government, perfect constitution. And what we're seeing right now are its shortcomings. And you know, it's interesting. I'm looking at a chart of the U.S. Constitution. When it was ratified, the sun was in the sign of Virgo, and Pluto was in Aquarius at that time. And so what we've had, it hasn't had a complete Pluto return, but we've had Neptune a couple of times opposing that sun. Neptune is coming into an opposition of it. And in the U.S. Declaration of Independence chart, it's coming in also to an opposition to Neptune itself in the Sibley chart. So there's something about Neptune dissolving, telling us, kind of showing us the reality. You know, the fog is lifting a little bit, or, you know, what you thought was an ideal has its flaws.
Well, and also one thing that I like
do anything about it.
And what I like about that too is it brings to mind, you know, a line from the Course in Miracles. It's, you know, a drop of water in the ocean. That's what each of us are. You know, and if we can begin to understand that our drops are not, that we're not as individualized as we think we are, that we actually are part of a collective, or we can really understand that the way we treat the weakest in our society is an example of, you know, just how not strong we are, how we lack in courage. And, you know, the one thing that's exciting for right now is I feel that, you know, the only place we can go is up. We can only make it better. But I know that, you know, over the next few years, this Pluto return, I think, is going to be a revolution. I think, whoever wins this election, there's still going to be a nightmare to deal with.
Oh, yeah. Well, I have a question for you, Michael. Given, you know, I was just thinking of the ocean as a metaphor for we're the ocean. We're just drops, and we all of the ocean. Do you believe that there's evil?
That's such a great,
outside of this realm?
You know, I really have a hard time.
I mean, evil forces beyond the earthly plane.
I know that's what science fiction has really given us all the ability to consider and play with. You know, we watch some of these things, and you know, we have a very interesting view. I personally don't believe in evil. I learned something from my therapist years ago, Leslie Nathanson here in Santa Fe, who's also an astrologer. She says,
Mhm.
you know, what it is we forget who we are. You know, and we think of what sin is. You know, the word sin in Latin means without. You know,
Mhm.
it's without God, without presence, without awareness, without understanding. And the truth is, we as human beings spend a lot of our time without understanding. And how can we, you know, like one of the things I love to say is, you know, you can't blame a 4-year-old for not knowing how to drive a car. I think there's so many aspects of life that work along that metaphor. And so how do we find compassion for one another in the confusion, in the lack of understanding, as we become who we are here to become? I don't think these are
What you're
easy
just,
answers.
yeah, what you're describing to me is the different aspects of Jupiter.
Mm,
The Jupiter that really recognizes that for the good of all, the laws must be adhered to, fairness must be distributed, or, you know, the part of us that wants to go off and find our own delights, our own pleasures, and forget about what that does to other people.
right,
Forget that they're a part of the ocean,
right.
and that pollutes the ocean. Maybe, I don't know.
I mean, it's just like, you know, people who litter. I mean, I just, you know, it's all these different things, you know, how we show how we respect ourselves through how we live our lives.
Yeah.
And
I'm distracted right now
yeah,
because one of my cats, there's a bird at one of the windows that I'm
oh,
looking at, and it's teasing one of my cats, and she's going crazy, jumping up on the window and bouncing.
wasn't that a perfect metaphor for what is going on for so many of us right now? I love it. Anything you have coming up that you want to share, or you want to wrap up what I think
Oh, well,
kind
one
of
thing I
covered
want to
it.
share is that KSFR is going into fundraising mode. I do a show called Moonwise on KSFR,
Great show.
and every Saturday morning at 10:30, and you can find it as a podcast at ksfr.org under the program tab on the homepage. There's podcasts, and you know, this is public radio, which hugely depends on the public to support it. And so consequently, those of you that have been watching Michael and I and also watch Moonwise, please support KSFR and support Michael and I by telling others about this. What do we call this? This
Our
Zoom,
weekly chats.
our weekly chat on YouTube. Deep
Yeah,
dive,
deep
you
dives.
name it, deep dive with new, unique perspectives. and uh, and that's it for now.
Perfect. I'm doing a, I'm going to be doing a 4 different workshops on, excuse me, esoteric astrology for Kepler College. People can get information on my website at coremichael, C-O-R-E, Michael.com, or email me at michael@coremichael, or reach me at 505-690-3860. If you like this, if you're enjoying it, please hit the like button. If you haven't subscribed already, please hit subscribe, share with your friends. If you have some interesting things, we love the feedback we get from people. Thank you so much. And questions, we really appreciate. So please keep it up. It's always a treat talking with you, Merrylin.
Yeah. So have a great week, Michael.
Thank you, Merrylin.
Bye for now.